Did you know that Costa Rica is home to a commercial winery, the first ever in Central America? They also make a unique liqueur from the Uchuva, aka the golden berry or ground cherry.
We'll talk more about our experience there on today's episode of
Poly in Paradise. Nestled in the Copey de Dota Valley in the Talamanca Mountains between the Central Valley and the El General Valley is where you'll find the Copey vinícola, or winery. It's just over an hour away from Cartago, the Central Valley's southernmost city, and about 2 hours away from San Isidro de General, aka PérezZeledón, in good driving conditions, that is.
Unlike our previous location we visited on this trip to find the resplendent quetzal bird, the Copey Estate Winery is located quite a ways away from the Inter-American Highway, over some challenging roads. Four-wheel drive may not be a necessity, but it would certainly give you extra peace of mind and help ensure that you arrive at the estate at the time you selected for your tour. Especially if you're visiting during the heaviest parts of the rainy season, from about September through November, it would be a good idea.
Now, before you jump in your vehicle to start heading there, you need to know that the grounds are not open to the general public. You need to book a tour first through their website at the link down below. The last thing that you want is to drive all that way to encounter a closed gate. There's a couple of different times that you can choose from. You can choose your own private tour or even go on the family tour, which allows children. If you want to eat more than is provided during the tasting portion of the tour, you can select from a few different charcuterie boards that will be brought out to you once the tour is concluded. Everything has to be selected and paid for in advance, however, with the exception of purchasing bottles and souvenirs from their shop.
After having accidentally driven there the day before and encountering said closed gate, we knew we needed to give ourselves plenty of a time to arrive on the actual day of our tour. Even though you could see the town of Copey de Dota from our cabina where we were staying the night before. Just one example of how patience is required when traveling around Costa Rica, even in places that appear very close to one another on a map. We arrived a bit early to a still closed gate, but it wasn't long before another car pulled up behind us. We sent a WhatsApp message to the estate to let them know we were waiting, and the gate opened up for us.
Driving up the road to the Welcome Center, it was easy to see why the owners were drawn to that location. Rolling hills surrounded us, which is not only great for growing grapes and uchuvas, but made for some spectacular views from the rooftop as well as their tasting room. We had a little bit of time to take in those views after we checked in, signed some waivers, and needed to wait a little bit longer to see if the additional people were going to show up.
When they failed to show up, our tour guide asked the four of us present which language we preferred the tour to be in. And we unanimously decided on English. It started with a video showcasing a bit of the history about the owners and their three extreme wineries. One located in a desert in Israel, another on a volcanic mountain range in California, and the one we were currently in, as well as the unique challenges faced by each winery. From there, we began the tour in earnest, starting with the Mama Uva vine that had been there almost at the beginning. We then moved on to the netting-covered grapes, where Brandy was disappointed to find out that the irrigation system was imported from Israel and not available locally.
Gardening in a tropical climate where we receive very little rain for almost half the year can leave you looking for alternatives to dragging around a 100-foot hose all over the property. You know, can't fault a girl for asking. But being there in Copey and the higher elevations and cooler temperatures helped me understand why I struggled so much to keep our Uchuva plants alive. I also came to appreciate the fact that Uchuvas have a bit more natural protection against insects and some birds, being encased in a paper-like lantern. The Copey estate didn't have to keep their Uchuva fields completely ensconced in mesh in order to keep their harvest either.
After answering any remaining questions about the growing of the grapes and the Uchuvas, the group began to make its way back to the processing building, which was attached to the tasting room. For the record, the outdoor portion of the tour didn't take very long and wasn't very physically demanding overall. The indoor portion was even easier going, as everything was on one level and close to one another. We got to take a look at the different processes that were used on the grapes versus the Uchuvas. And Brandy got to geek out and more when the guide started talking about the different chemical processes they used on each. It certainly gave us some ideas about how we want to continue to adapt our own fruit wine making processes for this climate and fruit.
With the science-y part concluded, we headed into the tasting room, where other staff had set up our tasting boards and empty glasses, along with a pamphlet detailing the tasting note on each wine, and a bit of information about where the wines came from and what to pair with it. And of course, the price, which was discounted for those taking the tour, by the way. Our tour guide stayed our guide for this portion as well, giving us instructions and answering any more questions that we had along the way. And I'm someone who tends to prefer sweeter white wines, which can be fairly difficult to find in Costa Rica. Even so, I was shocked to discover that I actually enjoyed all 4 wines that we tried, even though they were definitely on the drier end of the spectrum, and actually really liked the Syrah that came from the very vineyard that we were in.
I'm pretty similar to Brandy when it comes to wine preferences, and totally agreed with her, which is why we bought one of their Tierra Syrah bottles to bring back with us. The other 3 options were also good for dry wines, but that one was definitely the best for us. The pairing options were also clearly expertly chosen, with each accompaniment enhancing the flavors of not only the wines they were paired with, but with their own flavors. Once everyone was finished with the 4 glasses of wine, we moved on to the part we were most excited for, the Golden Rush liqueur. Before diving into the liqueur, we started off lighter with a dessert topped with some of their Goldenlicious spread and one of the no sugar added seltzers, which had the perfect amount of sweetness and was incredibly refreshing.
I remember remarking to the group about how dangerous that beverage could be, sipping at pool or beachside in the heat and not really tasting the alcohol present in it. It was so good. Then we moved on to the liqueur itself, which they presented to us both chilled and room temperature. I liked both of them, but there was certainly a smoothing effect that chilling the liqueur had on the bite that comes with higher alcohol contents. It was definitely tasty, so we ended up picking up a bottle of that for ourselves as well. And yes, it will be thrown in our freezer before we sip that at home too.
I'm certainly looking forward to having both of these from the comforts of our home. Once the tasting was over, we wandered over to the store section to get those bottles and to look through their other assorted items. The soaps, candles, keychains, etc. looked nice, but we're not really a knick-knack type of family. And with no trips planned back to the US anytime soon for gift giving, we just stuck with the wine and the liqueur. Shortly after, our charcuterie boards were brought to the table we had requested outside in order to take advantage of cool breezes and beautiful views.
We split 2 of the boards, the deli board as well as the smoked trout one, where we got to have fresh Uchuvas as well as delicious meats and cheeses, and of course, some locally sourced smoked trout. It was the perfect ending to a wonderful experience, although the tour and food are quite pricey, just to warn you all. The facilities, including the bathrooms, were clean and easily accessible. So if you are a wine lover and visiting Costa Rica, especially if you're headed up into the Talamanca Mountains, I would definitely come check this place out for yourself. Whenever my dad and stepmom come back for a visit, we're certainly planning on bringing them.
As long as you have a decent vehicle, preferably with four-wheel drive, remember, that would be the only negative thing that I would warn people about, especially to those who aren't used to driving on Costa Rican mountain roads. Go to the earliest tour possible to minimize your chance of driving in the rain and or fog, and it would be a good idea to find a place to stay the night in advance if you're planning on splitting a bottle of wine when you're there, or if you're there during the heavier parts of the rainy season. And give yourself plenty of time to get there as well.
Have you been to the Copey Estate Winery before? Let us know down in the comments what you thought about it. Have any other places you would like us to cover in the future? Let us know down below too. And as always, thank you for watching, commenting, all of those things. And we'll see you next time on our next adventure being Polly in Paradise.
Hi there, YouTube. Hope you're enjoying our content. Don't make Max sad. So please like and subscribe to follow us on our adventures.